Savage Fatebreaker uses elementally infused abilities just like the normal encounter and the Warrior of Light trials. We assign players clock positions with the tanks and healers on cardinals and have them rotate counterclockwise to form pair groups for later mechanics. Burnished Glory is Fatebreaker's raid-wide AoE. In the Savage difficulty, it also applies a 15-second bleed debuff, so heals and mitigation will be essential. As in the normal difficulty encounter, you won't actually see the Holy Light variants of the following abilities for the first third of the encounter, but we'll go through all the variations of Fatebreaker's main mechanics now. Elemental Break is a clock spread AoE and is the first of the elementally charged abilities. Fire Elemental Break first hits players with a clock AoE, before hitting all DPS or tanks and healers with split damage stack AoEs. Thunder Elemental Break starts with the clock AoEs before hitting all players with circle AoEs, which hit pretty hard. We have the ranged players move out so that the melee can spread accordingly to avoid overlap. Finally, the Holy variant of Elemental Break will be a clock AoE followed by conal split damage AoEs on both healers and one of the tanks. To resolve this, we split into special groups of 1 healer and 2 DPS, as well as a third group of the 2 tanks. Fatebreaker's second elemental ability is Burnt Strike, a column AoE. Fire will cause the column AoE to be followed by a preventable knockback from where the AoE hit. Thunder will cause the column AoE to be followed by a double-wide column AoE. Holy Burnt Strike will, after a short delay, snapshot all players' positions and drop an AoE under them, which they have a short time to move out of. We handle this by stacking on the sides of the boss during the column AoE. Shortly after the column resolves, a flash will appear from the front of the boss. This flash is our cue to rotate either to the front or back of the boss to dodge the snapshotted AoEs. Bound of Faith is Fatebreaker's third main elemental ability. This ability gives a player prey, jailing them where they stand after a short delay. Fire will cause a stack AoE to be cast on the jailed player. We take this to the back of the boss for the party to share. Thunder will cause the player to shoot out 2 wide-angle tank buster cleaves on the nearest 2 targets. We have the prey-marked player move in front of the boss, with the tanks just slightly northwest and northeast of them, to safely bait the tank busters away from the group stacked behind the boss. The jailed player will also receive a lightning damage over time debuff that hurts quite a bit. Holy will target the jailed player with a circle AoE that gives all affected players a debuff that will deal raid-wide AoE damage when it expires. We have the prey-marked player go north of the boss, while everyone else adjusts south to avoid picking up extra debuffs. This fight will be made up of alternating phases between these core elemental abilities and specialized intermission phases. Now that we've reviewed the main elemental mechanics, we'll take a look at how to handle each of the intermissions. Powder Mark is a single target tank buster. Like the normal difficulty, it also gives the main tank a debuff that casts an AoE tank buster when it falls off. The first Powder Mark will come out just before the first turn of the heavens. This first turn of the heavens is always fire imbued. Fire and Thunder circles will appear on the stage and, at the end of their cast bars, the fire AoEs will double in size because of Fatebreaker's elemental charge. The Powder Mark we mentioned will also expire at this time. We handle this by having the Powder Mark tank stand to the north between the 1 and B markers, while the rest of the party stacks east of the 2 marker, near the edge of the arena. Fatebreaker's next special phase will be Shifting Sky, charging with either Thunder or Fire and summoning a different pattern of circles after a radial knockback. The dragon will appear in the center of the arena with a puddle of death beneath him, so avoid crossing through. These circles will follow the same formula as the last ones, with the imbued element expanding as the casts finish. 2 clones will appear and each target a player with Bound of Faith tethers, 1 fire and 1 thunder. The thunder player will go to the northern safe spot with the tanks, while everyone else will stack at the southern safe spot with the fire stack tether. Just after the circles resolve, so too will the Bound of Faith tethers. Tanks have a brief moment to adjust after the circles resolve before the lightning cleaves come out. While the Bound of Faith clones were resolving, Burnt Strike clones will appear on the outside of the arena, either on cardinal or intercardinal positions. If the clones are intercardinal, we move to the edge of the arena on a cardinal, and vice versa, to simplify handling their mechanics. The double-wide Thunder Burnt Strike will resolve first, followed by the Fire Knockback clone. On the edge of the arena you won't be hit by the column AoEs and can just pop your knockback prevention to negate the second clone. After the Shifting Sky mechanic is resolved, Fatebreaker will begin imbuing his main abilities with Holy Light, in addition to the Thunder and Fire variants you've been seeing so far. Fatebreaker will cast his second Powder Mark, followed by a Rite of the Heavens that is either Fire or Thunder imbued. Rite of the Heavens will summon 4 portals or mirrors. These will shoot column AoEs at the end of their cast, with the imbued mirrors shooting double-wide AoEs. We handle this by having the party stack on the small safe spot between the two non-imbued mirrors. The powder mark tank will either get out to one of the safe spots adjacent to the safe mirrors on the edge of the arena, or can use Hallowed Ground or Super Bowl Light and just stand between the dangerous mirrors, since their invulnerability will prevent them from taking the damage down. If you don't have invulnerability cooldowns, the main tank can move the boss in advance between the safe spots, allowing the powder mark tank to maintain uptime. Fatebreaker's next special mechanic will be a fire or thunder-infused Sundered Sky. Like Rite of the Heavens, this will summon the 4 elemental portals, but this variant will start with a knockback. After the knockback, the dragon will appear in the middle with his Puddle of Death and target a random player with its 270-degree cleave. To preserve the safe spots on the safe portal side of the arena, we want to bait this AoE directly between the 2 dangerous mirrors, as on-center as possible. This will snapshot at the same time that players are knocked back. Immediately after the knockback, we need to move across the arena to the safe spots next to the non-imbued mirrors. As we're moving across the arena, one player will be targeted with the Fire Elemental stack Bound of Faith Tether, while another is targeted with the Holy AoE Debuff Tether. The entire party will stack with the Fire Tether player near the boss, while the Holy Tether player moves to either one of the safe spots along the edge of the arena. While the Bound of Faith Tethers resolve, 3 Burnt Strike clones appear on the outside of the arena, either on cardinals or intercardinals. These will always resolve in the order Holy, followed by Thunder, and then Fire, or Bait, followed by Double Wide, and finally Knockback. This can seem overwhelming, but it's actually quite simple to resolve. If the clones are cardinal, we stack on an intercardinal marker together, and vice versa if the clones are intercardinal. Once we're stacked, we wait until we see the raid-wide damage from Mortal Burn Mark come out. This happens at the same time as the Flashbang Snapshot, but spares you the trouble of having to look for the Holy Clone. As soon as we see the raid-wide Mortal Burn Mark, we move straight out to the edge of the arena from whatever marker we're on. This will leave you out of range of both the baited Holy AoEs and the double-wide Thunder AoE that will resolve at roughly the same time. We hit our knockback prevention and the Fire Clone is once again a non-factor, resolving the mechanic. The second cast of Turn of the Heavens will once again be either Fire or Thunder empowered. The Circle AoEs will return once again, and the safe spots for this will be on the very outside of the arena, on either side of the non-imbued circles. Fatebreaker will also cast either a Fire or Thunder-imbued Elemental Break, meaning that during these circles we must also do a Clock AoE, and then either a Spread or Pair Stack. There are a lot of ways to handle this, but we chose to color coordinate our safe spots with our clock markers. For instance, I am the Southwest clock player and the Scholar is the South clock player. We both have a blue marker at our clock position. This means me and the Scholar will always be on either side of whichever circle next to a blue marker is safe, depending on the element Turn of the Heavens was imbued with. After the clock AoEs resolve, we adjust to either stack together for Fire or spread out for Thunder. If Turn of the Heavens is imbued with Fire, you can actually stand in these tiny safe spots between the middle Thunder circle and adjacent blue circles for melee uptime, but the positioning is a bit more precise. After the second Turn of the Heavens, Fatebreaker will cast another Powder Mark, followed by a second Fire or Thunder imbued Rite of the Heavens. We resolve this as we did the first, with the only difference being that instead of a Fire Stack Tether, a player may get a Holy AoE Debuff Tether, in which case they'll need to leave the stack group to occupy whichever safe spot the Powder Mark tank isn't occupying. Stack or spread accordingly to resolve the mechanic. Prismatic Deception is a joke of a mechanic that really just serves as a mini break before the final phase. Everyone spreads to the outside of the arena in their clock position and waits for the clones to appear. If the clone in your spot has its sword raised, indicating it will fire an AoE later, you move forward to your marker. If the player opposite you moves forward, you move forward as well, as their clone's AoE will hit your spot. Very soon there will be only 2 players still on the edge of the arena, and these players are standing in what will soon be the safe spots. Adjust to them, and after the AoEs have resolved, return to your clock spots on the edge of the arena and repeat this process once more. After Prismatic Deception, there isn't anything new to be seen, but Fatebreaker is about to start throwing everything at you at once. Cycle of Faith is the final elementally charged ability we will see in this encounter. This ability combines the other elemental abilities in the following order. First, that element's Elemental Break mechanics will resolve, followed by that element's Burning Strike mechanics, and finally the Bound of Faith Tether mechanic. Just for clarity, we'll go over each of the possible combinations. The easiest way to mess these up is to be the Bound of Faith player and not realize it. The prey marker appears as soon as Cycle of Faith begins casting, so be aware of this, and if you have comms, even call it out to make sure no one's falling asleep. It's also worth mentioning that Fatebreaker will always face north during the Cycle of Faith mechanics, making orientation much more consistent. For Thunder Imbued Cycle, players first spread for Clock AoEs, then spread for Circle AoEs, then dodge the column AoE, and the double wide column AoE, and finally the Prey player resolves with the tanks to the north. For Fire Imbued cycle, spread for the clock AoEs, rotate for pair stacks, dodge the column AoE, move inward or arm's length for the knockback, and finally stack behind the boss to share the fire tether. For the Holy Light Imbued cycle, spread for clock AoEs, adjust into special groups for split damage cleaves, dodge the column AoE, bait the flashbang AoEs on the sides of the boss, and have the Prey marked player move north of the boss, while the rest of the party moves to the south of the boss to avoid extra raid-wide AoE debuffs. You'll notice our tanks actually rotate to the front with the Prey player, and somehow make it out in time to not pick up extra AoEs. This just goes to show that it can be done, albeit unintentionally, but I recommend just playing it safe. After each elemental cycle has been cast once, you'll get hit with one more raid-wide before a longer enrage cast. While the DPS check here is tighter than Cloud and Shadowkeeper, it's still achievable even with a few deaths or a healer LB3, so be persistent and master each of Fatebreaker's elemental patterns to forge your path to the final savage encounter of the Shadowbringers expansion.